Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? The next WIP conversation that I would love to bring up was the Gabe Kapler debate. And the question was, did Gabe Kapler have a fair shake? And obviously, I despise that man. I think he's a horrendous manager when it comes to baseball. Very new at it. I'm not claiming that he can't learn. Of course he can learn. Anyone, if they put their mind to it, can find ways to study their craft, can work on their craft, can use past experiences to help them develop and groom into a reasonable manager. I don't know if that's going to be the case in San Francisco or not, but I do know that it did not work here in Philadelphia. But there are people who really enjoyed Gabe Kapler. I can't believe that is true, but there are people out there that claim he did not get a fair shake. And when you look at what he did here in Philadelphia in 2 seasons, and I can't believe it was only 2 seasons, it felt like 7, 8, or 9, just based off of the brutalness and having to hear him speak and having to see him walk up to the mound and pretend like he was pissed off and getting in the umpire's face, even though it was complete crap and totally fake. He went 80-82 in his first year and 81-81. The thing is, when you look at the wins and what they were supposed to win, according to Vegas, they overachieved both years. So the question is raised, was Gabe Kapler hated because of his personality, who he was as an individual, or was it about the moves that he was making on the diamond? Because I will say, analytics rule the world in baseball, and when you look at what he was doing when he was making certain decisions, I would argue that majority of them was probably just told to him. He was just doing what the numbers said, and whatever upper management claimed was the best move, that's what he would do in those certain situations. But I do think it's meaningful to have that clubhouse on the same page. I talk about this all the time with the NBA. Coaches don't really do too much in professional sports. When you are a manager in baseball, the impact is so little. How many games do they say seem to be the difference with a manager? 9 games or so, and we're talking about 162 regular season games. Now, of course, you can use the argument that those 9 games get you in the playoffs or don't get you in the playoffs at times. Absolutely. But that just shows you, though, when you look at the length of the regular season, the impact is so tiny. It's really about the clubhouse, keeping the guys on the same page, the attitude, the personality of the team is on the manager, and I don't know if his style was what fit best with this city and the team. But before we dive more into this episode of Sports Talk with Broads is sponsored by Orbit Energy and Power. They set the standard for clean energy. So whether you are looking to add solar to your home or your company, Orbit Energy and Power works directly with you to ensure that you are getting the best deal. That's not all. Orbit can also provide water purification systems, backup energy services, battery storage, and more. Visit them online at Orbit Energy US or give them a call at 800-836-3987. So with Gabe, I'm going to be honest. There were times where I wanted to rip my hair out because of poor decisions. There was one where I believe he put Roman Quinn in a baseball game to pitch late when he had Adam Hazley, who was at least a pitcher at one time. Now, you can laugh at that, right? How much impact would that really be? Adam Hazley, a guy who has never pitched in the MLB, compared to Roman Quinn. Is that the difference in the game? I don't know. But that just shows me that he doesn't understand things all the time. I mean, it's common sense. You have someone who at least pitched before at a very high level, and then some guy who has never pitched before at a very high level, like legitimately. Getting thrown in when it's a 12-run ball game, that doesn't count as legit pitching. Adam Hazley was a legit pitcher and a pretty damn good one. Why not use him? How about calling the bullpen without having anyone warmed up? Yeah, come on into the game. Come on into the game. I mean, that's silly. A couple times he screwed up the double switch. So his brain wasn't clicking all the time. Those type of decisions really irked me. But I'm not going to lie. Majority of it for me is just the personality. But that is a huge part of being a manager. I would say 95% of it is that. Especially now that the National League is going to be going to the DH for this year, and realistically, I think it's going to grow into full-time as well. We've been having those conversations all the time. So with that being said, it's such a key piece. And you have Bryce Harper laughing at the manager when he stated something very similar about a curveball machine. The statement was, we're going to get into the cages and we're going to work on the curveball machine, because the team was totally swinging and missing. And your superstar, your big star, your $330 million star is going up to the media and laughing about it. Pretty much laughing in the manager's face. There was a moment where you could see him sort of lose the clubhouse. Carlos Santana, perfect example. What was going on in that clubhouse? Video games before ball games, playing Fortnite. You hear the rumors about Carlos Santana throwing TVs. He was piss poor here in Philly. What happened as soon as he left? There was a reason why he just had a down time in his career here in Philly. And I think Gabe Kapler had something to do with that. The message sent by Gabe Kapler being way too easy on these guys. See, I would think that in the MLB, if I go 0 for 4 in a night, I don't want my manager to rip me and destroy me, but be real. Keep it 100 to some extent. Don't try and say, well, Rhys Hoskins had phenomenal at-bats. Did you see that one foul tip he had when it was a 0-2 count? Man, he was really working. No. I went 0 for 4. I had 4 strikeouts. Keep it real a bit. Don't throw me under the bus completely, but come on, keep it real. Rhys will bounce back tomorrow. It wasn't Rhys's best night. He knows that. He'll have a good night tomorrow. I mean, do something other than try and sell to the media or sell to the fans that there were some great moments in those 4 strikeouts. Stop. I mean, that's garbage. That's really babying. Super babying. And listen, in this era of sports, you have to baby athletes. That's reality. But you can go to the extreme. It's a players' league in all of sports. With Brett Brown, I say it all the time. You don't go out there and start sitting your players screaming, Ben Simmons, I'm sitting you until you shoot. Like, the NBA especially, the players run the asylum, and it's all of sports. But you can't be too much of a softie. And Gabe Kapler was just that. There's already rumors and speculation going around with how Gabe is going to fit with the San Francisco Giants because he's just so odd. He's such a random dude, if you will. And he did not fit this city's personality. And that matters. Was the team good enough? No, they weren't good enough. They didn't have enough pitching. Definitely, they did not have enough pitching. But there was a collapse that kept happening. The 2 years that he was here, the same collapse happened. Now, why is that? Did he have something to do with it? Did he keep the team engaged? Or was the team not talented enough to the point where they just didn't have enough skill? They would fall apart because the skill level was not there. And 98% of it is on the players. No doubt about it, if not more. The players have to play. So sure, could you argue that Gabe Kapler was the reason that they were even in the race to begin with? If you remember the first season here, when they didn't even have Bryce Harper yet or Andrew McCutchen, it was still Odubel Herrera, Nick Williams of the world, and those type of players. They were in it till deep. But everybody knew. It was like the entire city knew it was full of crap. Nobody truthfully believed in that baseball team. And I remember thinking at the time, I don't believe in them either. There's no way that they're this good. Michael Franco is still swinging the bat. Like, there's no reason why they should still be involved. But they are. So I'm just going to keep going with the flow. I can't explain this. I don't have words to explain how they continue to win, but they are winning. So I will support it. I don't believe in it deep down, but they're doing it, so something is right. Maybe it's just the magical year. Do you give Gabe credit for that? And I'm going to go with no, because it was the players playing. But I'm not also going to crush him insanely for the collapse either. I think the talent is why they were where they were. It was just the talent was playing way better than they should have in the beginning. And then the talent just kind of died down because when the moments get tough and when it gets deep in August and when it gets early September, when it gets into big moments, they flat out just did not have enough skill. And they were young, Rhys Hoskins young, like They didn't have it. And that's not Gabe's fault. It all comes down to he did not have the personality. So it's a weird question to answer. Did he get a fair shake? I think when you know, you know. And with this, you knew. It wasn't going to be a long-term thing. You could see the clubhouse starting to turn, and it was iffy. And if it's iffy, why continue to move on? And here's another thing to factor in. You literally flip-flopped him with Joe Girardi. Now, it doesn't really matter, right? If you flip-flop Gabe Kapler with another nobody, another first-year manager, a guy who doesn't really have much in this league at all, okay, I think this conversation is a little bit more worthy, right? It's still worthy, but more worthy. Now, how do you complain? If you're a Gabe Kapler supporter, one, you should get checked. Two, you just replaced him with a dude who is so respected, who the locker room will not walk all over, who has a lot of success in this league. But now I question. A lot of the decisions made with Gabe, it was numbers-based, and he made decisions based off of what the number said. When the lineup card comes out and gets sent to him, it's all based off of who's hitting who off what pitcher and if he bats third and this and that. I mean, all of it was numbers crunched, and the card was handed to Gabe Kapler, and Gabe Kapler walks it out. Will Joe Girardi have more freedom? And I would think yes. When Joe Girardi is talking to teams, I'm sure that he was saying, I want to have freedom. I want to be able to make my own lineup. I want to be able to still have that part of baseball involved because that's a key part of being a manager. And I think he's right. I think the manager should. Like if somebody's on a 12-game hitting streak, and here comes a pitcher that he statistically does not do good against, but there's someone on the bench who might be a lefty, who might have great numbers off the guy, and the numbers will tell you, well, we'll sit the guy on the hitting streak. Come on, right? I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy talk to me. But in today's game, here they go. They start doing it. Yeah, it makes sense. And then when that player does get back in the lineup, after that game's over, maybe he goes 0 for 3 and walks. And he loses the mojo. I feel as if Joe Girardi worked something out and said, I'm going to be making the decisions. I'm going to be the one that sets the lineup card. I would be shocked if I'm wrong. I really would be. I would be shocked if that's not the way that this goes down. I'm intrigued by this Phillies team for this upcoming season. I look at Joe Girardi and I question how much can he change from an on-field standpoint. And I wonder if his presence is that important to these guys. And it should be. But the presence is important. I'm thinking about some of these coaches around other sports. NFL, Sean Payton compared to Ben McAdoo. If you're an NFL player and you're learning under Sean Payton or Andy Reid, and he's speaking to you, you're listening, right? I mean, you are fully engaged. He won a Super Bowl. He knows what he's talking about. He's been in this league for a while. He's involved, and he has had so much success. You listen. Ben McAdoo speaks, and you're laughing, right? Deep down, it's, all right, I mean, listen, he's been in the NFL, he's kind of a bum. All right. You can say the same with some of these other guys. I compare that to Gabe Kapler and Joe Girardi. Here's a guy who's been a manager for 2 seasons. He's been a goofball. He's been laughed at. He's sort of a joke. And then you got a guy who's had success, first off, as a player, right? Not that Gabe Kapler didn't have any success, but Joe Girardi has had plenty of success as a player. And then we're talking World Series as a manager. Now, do the New York Yankees and the players have something to do with that? Yeah, I would say yes. But he's been there. He's been in big moments. He's been in big cities. Gabe Kapler was in Boston as a player. I think that counts as a big city, absolutely. Managing the big city, though, completely different. And I remember opening day 2 years ago, and they did on NBC Sports Philadelphia a little bit of a background on Gabe Kapler, and he was sitting down and he was talking about how pumped he is to be a part of the Phillies, how awesome it is to be in a fan base that cares, to be in a city that is brutally honest, that will rip you apart, that will love you when it's great. And I always date back to that little segment, and I wish I could find the audio or the visual somewhere just so I could laugh at it. He got what he wanted. I mean, there's no doubt he got what he wanted. And it's interesting because I always talk about this when it comes to players. People in Philly would choose a player that fits their but their personality, who isn't as good. They would rather have that player than someone who's super talented who doesn't work as hard. And is that Gabe Kapler? Gabe Kapler did not fit this city at all. His personality was super West Coast. He was a goofy dude. He was hard to connect to. But the team went 80-82 and 81-81 with two teams that we can all agree just was not good enough. The first year, nobody even believed in the team to watch them. It was almost sad that they were performing as good as they were at one point, and nobody was filling the seats. I remember the talk around the town was, how come no one's going to the games? How come no one is supporting this team? And he had that team playing well. It collapsed, but throughout a really decent amount of time, that team was playing well. Last year, the team fell apart with injuries. Andrew McCutchen went down. The pitching was abysmal. We can all agree they weren't good enough. 500 baseball team, 81 wins. You could say that they were probably good enough to win 75. So was he bad at his job, or decent at his job, or good at his job? But the moral of the story is nobody connected with him on a personal level, so they were booing him out of town. Look, I just didn't think he was the guy, all right? Did he have some mess-ups managing? Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I pointed them out. You don't have someone come into the game without warming up, right, out of the bullpen. That's a flat-out disgrace. The double switches at times, who he's putting on the mound to throw. But when you're a second-year manager or first-year manager, you are going to make mistakes. You will have some errors, and I can totally live with that. I just didn't think he was the guy. I can separate personality from skill. I didn't like Donovan McNabb as a person. You look at what he did. How many NFC Championship games? I get it. He didn't win the big one. When you look at this, he still had a hell of success. I just don't really like him as a person, but I can separate the two. With Gabe, I didn't really like his style, and I didn't really like him as a person, personality-wise, as a baseball manager. I'm sure he's a good dude outside of the sports, but when you look at what he did walking up to the mound, and oh man, just the way he looked, he was a hate to face. Now, I will say it was entertaining to have him here, just from the mindset of really getting into him. I mean, if you go back and listen to my post-game reactions when Gabe Kapler did something bad, I was fuming, biting my fist. My face would turn red. I was going crazy. I was disgusted. It was kind of fun. I'm going to miss that. I really doubt I'm going to feel that way about Joe Girardi. And speaking of Joe Girardi, I just feel because of all this coronavirus stuff, we don't really understand the difference it will make from a clubhouse level. Same with Didi Gregorius. Because of all this, we haven't really got to talk and dive into it and see it. We got a stud shortstop. He can make some plays defensively. We were living with Gene Segura last year, who hits around 300, who I don't have a problem with, even though sometimes he jogs to first base. And by the way, it's not his fault that Andrew McCutchen went down last year. I can't stand that crap. I just can't stand it. Just happens. Just sports. But with Didi at shortstop, it's going to change the game, and it just makes the lineup deeper. He's got some power with his bat. Now, we don't know exactly what he's going to be able to provide, considering he's coming off injury, but I don't think it's going to hurt this team. But what about Scott Kingery? What about Adam Hazley? What about Roman Quinn, although he's probably going to get injured? Who's playing third base? Is it Segura? I guess it's hard for me to be super pumped and super juiced because I know the pitching isn't good enough. I'll just say this. It's a weird situation. They're good enough to care about their games, but they're not good enough to win anything. And the team knows that going into the offseason, so that's where the bumping heads of the fan base and Matt Klentak is. Like, we all knew what they needed to do, and I would say they did not go out and fulfill their starting pitching enough. So that's what bothers me, but they're still good enough to watch all the games and to care, but they're just not good enough to win the division or even maybe make the wild card. Here's the thing as well, though. They're adding the wild card teams. So now you have a better chance of making it, and it's a sprint. Boom, get in there, get out. Here's the games. I know Bryce Harper said something about 130-something games, and that's way too much with the time that's left. It seems if they go with this 82-game schedule, it's going to be a sprint. And it's either, if you look over the last couple seasons, the Phillies come out flying, the Phillies just get on it, and they start to make it happen, and they won't have time to collapse, or the collapse just starts sooner. Only time will tell, and that's the thing. Only time will tell. But in terms of Gabe Kapler, as we end off here, there was something that just didn't flow properly. There was something that just didn't fit right. I don't know if he has it. And I think you got to be real sometimes. You got to keep it cool. You got to keep it 100. I'm not saying start calling people out, freaking out on them, and all that. And maybe that's just the way it was perceived by us. Maybe he would sit down with Rhys Hoskins after an 0-4 game and say, dude, you got to be better. You got to do this. You got to do that. And then to the media, he would say, listen, he did great. He did fine. He had some decent foul tips. But what he was saying to the team was completely different. I don't see it that way, though. I think that was just strictly the way that he worked. It was the way that he operated. It was too much of a friend, not enough of a coach. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there thinking that, well, you say the same thing about Brett Brown. But it's not the same thing, though. Because in the NBA, it is different than from any other sport. And believe it or not, Brett Brown has more of a firm grasp on things. He has more of his foot being down than Gabe Kapler did. And that's saying a lot. Because Brett doesn't have his foot down that much. But it was more than what Gabe Kapler did. And that is crazy to process. I think that they made the right move. It was kind of weird seeing Matt Klentak still defending Gabe Kapler while they went through that press conference of him being fired. If you remember, it was very awkward. It was very weird. He was sort of defending the hiring of Gabe Kapler, even though that they were talking about releasing him and firing him. Oh, God. Some of those press conferences with the Phillies late last year, ew, I don't even want to think about it. What am I doing bringing that up? I guess I'm just antsy a little bit because I'm hearing news about these players and the MLB talking about getting back on the field and the NBA with Walt Disney World. I'm just getting juiced up a little bit, even though I understand deep down that they're flat out not good enough and there'll probably be a 4th seed in the NL East. And, well, I guess it's all over the place right now if they play the AL East, and things will totally be different. So it's kind of hard to speculate at this point what exactly is going to go down and how players are going to react to this. Some teams going to be hot. Some teams are going to flow more than others. Why not the Phillies? Now, some teams are going to collapse. Some teams are not going to be able to just come out and start playing well. Why can't that be the Phillies too? It can go either way. And that's the scary thing. That is the scary thing. It could be the Phillies, but it can also be the Phillies that start rocking nice and hot, win 11 straight right out of the jump. Wow. I'm an idiot, huh? Yeah, I am. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sports Talk with Broads. One more time, this episode of Sports Talk with Broads is sponsored by Orbit Energy and Power, and they set the standard for clean energy. So whether you are looking to add solar to your home or company, Orbit Energy and Power works directly with you to ensure that you are getting the best deal. Their team has over 20 years of experience. They can also provide water purification systems, backup energy services, battery storage, and more. So visit them online at orbitenergy.us or call at 800-836-3987. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.